Uh-oh. Oh, dear. Here we go. The real guys.
We're doing it again?
The real compadres. Oh, yeah. We have many filtration mechanisms, don't we? We change the titles of things sometimes. But it's been a long time since we had a podcast. Oh, there we are. Yeah. Yeah, that works good. You guys hearing us okay this time? No problem on that?
Dear readers, out in listener land, anybody there?
Any comments? Yes. Yep. Awesome.
Nice.
So would you like to introduce the live stream podcast, Lou, old school style?
Yes, please.
Huh?
Do your thing.
With
Oh,
the
man.
voice?
Oh, I don't know if I can do this.
Do it! Give it to him.
Ladies and gentlemen of the world, people of the internet, wherever you are, whenever you are, thank you for joining us and welcome to a live Rex Reviews podcast.
That's what I'm talking
Yeah.
Did
about.
I do it?
You did it.
Now, we don't have the ability to edit anything. Unfortunately, sometimes people say crazy things within their lives. So we'll see how this goes. And we're totaling tea tonight, which is a good idea for such things. That's pretty hot. What is that? Some kind of cinnamon kind of deal or something? What is it?
Bengal spice.
Bengal spice tea.
Jesse Ross,
There he is.
big sexy.
Oh, introduce yourself.
Oh yeah. So I'm Mr. Rex Tibor. This is Mr. Lou McCoy, and this is Miss Casey Day. And I had this deal for a long time that I thought would be fun to do, which is kind of like a rock and roll Bible study deal for actual normal people, guys that are. Is that too crazy, Lou?
That sounds dangerous, actually.
Sounds dangerous. But no, man, like, it's so many people get bucked off the horse when it comes to any kind of religious type stuff.
Is that dead horse we were talking about
Yeah,
earlier?
it's the same horse. Actually, yes.
Mm-hmm.
And that's an interesting discussion. We can talk about that podcast. If you look at that's a good question. What is the pale horse represent? There's multiple layers of interpretation there, actually. There's like the geopolitical layer. There's the spiritual layer. There's a layer that's in your life. And then there's a layer of how the gospel message could be proclaimed throughout the different areas or the different time frames. Mm-hmm. And it's not like you have to pick one to be true. If you look at it from the old Hebrew mindset, they would have discussions that there would be multiple layers of encryption and stuff being delivered. You know what I'm saying? In any passage. So it's interesting how they used to communicate back in the day. They actually were smarter than we are today, believe it or not. We think we're so smart. It's accumulation of technology is the only thing we got.
Common sense isn't so common anymore.
No, it's not. And actually, the accumulation of the technology and the revolution, the Industrial Revolution, has really kind of made us, and plus the people's ability to control people and dumb them down, like in the Dark Ages, we are kind of in an intellectual Dark Ages, believe it or not, now.
I like that.
We kind of really are.
That's profound, man.
No, it's actually true.
Because back in the day, back in the Dark Ages, anything that was technological,
forbidden information was controlled.
Magic. It was magic, and people were punished for that.
Yep.
And in today's day and age, we've got an abundance of information to the point where it's oversaturated, and you can't tell what's real from what's not anymore.
Yeah. So it's
interesting.
It is interesting, man. And so, what were we just talking about, man? Because I had my brain just went in 10 directions at once.
The horse.
Interpreting the pale horse.
Oh yeah, that's a topic for another time. And here's something that's interesting. And then we'll get it. We're just going to start from square one, because this will be part one of the video series of Rex's rock and roll Bible church study deal with normal humans. That's what we're going to call it. We'll make an acronym or something for it, okay? And it's going to be like actual normal dudes talking about stuff. We might even pull out a pistol now and then just to stay Western. If it keeps you happy, it keeps you hanging around. I got the guitar if you want me to sing you hymns. I know that ain't going to happen. Sorry.
WWJC, Rex.
What?
What would Jesus carry?
Oh. I wasn't ready for that.
A 1911? Because he's the only guy that could get it to work all the time?
That's actually kind of funny.
I read that on the internet.
Did you read
somewhere.
that on the internet?
Yeah.
Oh,
Is
boy.
Dimitri out there too?
Yeah, Dimitri's in listener land.
How you doing, Dimitri?
I missed that guy.
Yeah, we're going to be down there soon, actually, for that, what is it?
A class.
Yeah, we got a class we're going to do down there. Seminar, or RX seminar at Bass Pro Shops in Vegas there.
Yes.
December 1 and 2, so.
December 1 and 2. If you're
Yeah.
still looking for training, make sure you check that out.
Yeah. I don't want to do too much of a commercial on it, but if you want to come, and it's going to be fun. We'll have fun there. And then you'll get to have more of this type stuff, but in real life. We'll all hang out, and I think you guys are kind of sort of halfway planning on coming to this one, aren't you?
I think
Yes.
so.
Yeah,
That's the
I
plan.
think
So
we're
Lou and
on the
Casey will be
books.
there too. We might even have a mass discussion around the dinner table type situation. I wasn't sure in what direction I want to take this exact first video in this category, because there's a lot of different directions people like to take it. I like to just come out and like lay everything on the table and be 100% honest, so that there's no misconceptions, and kind of let people know where I come from. And you can introduce your position. You can introduce your position too. She's moderating. She's not texting everybody. She's moderating
No,
for
I'm
me.
not just like ignoring you guys. I'm reading your comments. So if you say something that I should mention, I mention it direct. So
This will be a discussion format here. We can talk about whatever you guys want to talk about. But what I want to talk about, just to start off the deal, is there's a few basic rules that basically anyone on planet Earth can live by, I think. Anyone ever see the movie Boondock Saints? Right? Remember those rules? Okay? And so there's, and not to put any more onto it than that, but just the rules. They said, do not rape, do not murder, do not steal. These are rules by which any man of any faith can embrace. And I horribly misrepresented the accent probably. But that's kind of, I think that's the most basic rules by which people should be able to kind of agree on planet Earth. If you're not, most societies will have you locked up or you know, what do they call it, banished from the village type deal, right? That being said, when I'm dealing with people in the real world, and the way we're going to conduct business here in this circle, when we go into the future of the Rex's rock and roll Bible study church thing, whatever.
Acronym.
Yeah, whatever we're going to call it someday, that's the rules to get in the door on that deal, okay? From there, there's responsibilities that get added the more you learn stuff, right? But in terms of Babylonians wanting to come out of Babylon and cross the river out of Egypt and get the heck out of that place, that's basically a good place to kind of like start to begin to have a conversation. So if we can all agree on that, that's fine. Aside from that, we're all humans, man. Everyone has their good days and their bad days. I'm not a saint by any close measure of an imagination, right?
And you said that as we learn more, you get more responsibilities that are added on. That's kind of the evolution of the human experience.
Yeah, dude.
As we become older and hopefully wiser, we can learn from our mistakes and become better people and help our friends and everybody else in our lives become better people too.
Yeah, one interesting thing too, a little bit of word of warning though, is like, if you actually want to gain wisdom, with wisdom comes great sorrow.
I agree with that. Well, and I was going to say on the topic of, being able to help our friends and neighbors, I think that the worst trials and tribulations that we are put through are so that we can help other people. And so if you are an intelligent person and you have, experience, it doesn't come without going through all of that.
Yep.
So, just on that topic, it's more so like all of the pain and the other stuff, that's what helps us to become that helping hand and to guide people towards the light.
I'll tell you what, man, in my life, I've been through a lot of weird, different kinds of experiences from different angles, right? And it's weird how it all kind of plays together to come together to make you who you are, right? And so I wouldn't trade any of my experiences off for the way they went down, good, bad, or ugly. They've all taught me a lot about the way the world works and the way people work and the way reality is and stuff like that. And it's also one thing, and this is an interesting topic, and we'll get to the main deal of it too, which is going to be the funny part of like, what religion would Jesus be, quote unquote Jesus. We'll just use that word for now, and then we'll get into the details later, because that's his Greek name. If you would travel on a time machine and go back in time, and look for that guy in Nazareth, they wouldn't call him that. He had a different name. But anyways, what was I just talking about, dude?
I was lost in your story.
Lost in the story.
You were talking about what Jesus' religion would be?
Yeah, what would Jesus, what would his religion be if he would actually come back? Who did he actually hang out with and why? And who did he not get along with? That's the main message we're going to get to on this deal today, okay? Because that's funny as hell, okay?
And that's where a lot of the message is, too.
Yeah, but it's real. And I'm going to keep it real, guys. I will never bear false witness against myself as long as I can hope not to, okay? In terms of being who I am for you on the TV deal, whatever that thing is called there.
So just to clarify, because you have quite a few people writing in that he was a Jew, can you clarify what you meant by that question?
By which question?
What would his religion be? Obviously, we know
If he
that
came here
Jesus was
today?
a Jewish.
Yeah.
Jewish.
Yeah.
But that's
Well,
not what
that was the culture and heritage he came in. That's a good conversation. It's more dynamic than that, though, too. I mean, he obviously was raised, in the tribe of Judah, right, in Israel during the day. Now, there's different definitions of different words. It's all like semantics in some ways. I was going to say Semitics, but you know what I mean?
That's a little
Semitical
unorthodox,
semantics.
Rex.
No, but you know what I mean? Like people have all these different terms, and each term is always loaded with some kind of preconceived ideas on what the hell that term means and all this kind of stuff. But before we get too far, I want to make sure so that we're all on the same page on this deal. I'm not going to bear false witness against my holy status as like a normal preacher type guy or teacher would do. We're going to be honest. We're going to tell you exactly where we stand, and we're going to all take this journey and discussion together at the same time. Because there ain't nobody on this deal or sitting on this planet that hasn't figured out 100%. There's only one outfit that, well, in my opinion, that gives you a clear set of instructions. But even with that, trying to navigate is hard, man. And that's the point. It's part of the journey. You exercise the muscle more, right? Yeah, so without getting into all that crazy stuff, that was a little bit of the speech there. Did someone have a question already?
Just people were commenting in that he would still be a Jewish, if he was here today. That was the biggest comment.
I saw one of the comments on there said that nobody is a saint. We all just do the best that we can with what we have where we're at.
Yeah. And I think the reality is even beyond that. I mean, there's so much that a guy could talk about. But I think that the rule number one is just honesty. Here's my problem with any kind of religious group or church or study group or walking in any kind of building with a steeple on it or stained glass windows or having a Bible study or having a thing like this on YouTube. This is my number one problem that I trip over all the time, and it drives me nuts. And that's why I don't participate in them. And that's why I go crazy. It's why I say, once you see it, you come to the great sorrow. You're never satisfied. Unfortunately, because of the fallen state of humans, we will try to hijack other people's relationships with the Creator, whoever made us and put us here, whatever that might be, okay? And we'll get into that later. I do have a specific idea of what I think is going on, but that's a whole nother topic of discussion. But what was I just talking about, man?
Well, it really fires you up. I think it was the hypocrisy of religion and why you don't play that game.
We're not going to play that game. The religious hierarchy, yes, degenerated into a game of who can climb to the top and be the holiest, or be the smartest, or be the most well-informed, or have the straightest shoelaces, or have the nicest combed hair, or have the best suit, or who can adhere to this deal better. And usually, the terms and conditions that they're all bent out of shape about are the ones that they've invented. You know why? Because they've decided that they were going to be God and invent their own religious rules. So that's part number one. So this is Rex's Bible study number one deal. I'm sola scriptura when it comes to that stuff, man. If it ain't in that book, I don't want to hear about it. Period. That's just the way I come from it, okay? If people are going to use that as a measure of righteousness, you can't go inventing rules. If you read Deuteronomy, right? It says, nobody shall take away one word out of this book or add one rule on this that ain't already in it. lest you add on your own judgment or subtract away your name out of the book of life kind of situation, I think is loosely what it communicates. And so that's kind of the way I roll. I don't like adding. Anytime humans have the authority, like we're talking about on the previous podcast, when you get, the more authority you give humans, the worse off it is, because we suck at governing each other because we have bad intentions, man. Where humans are like, sometimes the heart is like super evil and deceitful and it'll lead you in all kinds of weird, perverted, terrible directions in terms of how you're going to manipulate people and gain status over them and all this stuff. So that's one deal about religion that I think we don't want to even get within 500 yards of when we're doing it our style, okay? So if we ever start acting religious on here, you guys straighten us out and don't let that deal happen. We're going to keep it real. Because back in the early days, in my opinion, that's the way it really worked. I mean, like, so like, let's just Garden of Eden scenario, right? You think that they had a building with a thing on it, and then they went in there and like said some stuff, and then like went through the ceremony and all that stuff.
And then put money on the plate.
And then put the money on the plate and all that kind of stuff. And I'm not saying that that's all bad. There's cultural heritage value. There are certain things that are like communicated effectively in rituals if they're done properly. There were certain rituals that were, I think, ordained by the God, okay, to communicate certain profound points or certain things to look out for in life, or to communicate certain key lessons, right? Those things do exist. However, the ones that I don't like are the ones that we invent. I ain't about jumping through some other dude's flaming hoops. I will jump through as many hoops as I can for that guy up there, or the creator. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So that's kind of just my base foundation of that. But in terms of why I think so many people got bucked off the horse, including many of my friends and even myself for a short time, right, was because of the hypocrisy of everything. The guys that had the highest rank, the most stripes on their shoulders in whatever given flavor church, were the guys that when you really got to them, they were polished, really nice on the outside. They didn't say no naughty words. They didn't, everything was perfect, and everything was like the kids were all stacked up nicely in a row up in front and the whole 9 yards. You know what I'm talking about? And then you get to know them, and they're all about how smart they are, or how much they got shit figured out, or how good they are and everyone else is stupid. That's usually the biggest problem, the biggest temptation for people who, the more you learn, is very tempting to get cocky and proud. And when you read the book, over here, we got one of these, if you guys want to get into reading it at some point, okay? If you read the book, it talks a lot about one of the things that the creator does not like is people being proud and cocky, okay? And because it's like pretty hilarious to him. You know what I'm saying? Because we don't got our stuff together. You know what I'm saying? So just an attitude adjustment deal. So we're going to do our best to not try to do that stuff.
So what kind of folks did Jesus hang out with?
Yeah, that's a funny question. So wouldn't it be nice if Jesus would just, because I've been in outfits, right? And they're like, oh, wouldn't it just be great if Jesus would come into the church and walk down the aisle, and when he returns, and what would we do? I'm like, you want to see what that guy would do when he walked into your building? Dude. I mean, it's recorded what he did do. They always ask this question, what would Jesus do, right? Well, you can find out what he would do by reading what he did do a few times, and then you'll have a better idea of the character and his standards and what set him off and what didn't. Because there were certain times that he didn't like stuff happening, and he let them know about it in a very, very straightforward kind of way. You know what I'm saying? And then, but with other people, he was pretty cool.
So a question was asked, and that was all aspects of photography asked, who wouldn't he hang out with? And you were just addressing that.
Okay, good. Yeah, you guys keep me on track. That's your job. Otherwise, I'll go down every rabbit trail I see. Okay?
Okay.
All right.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, no problem. You guys keep me on track. So who did Jesus... Okay, his name, by the way, Yahushua, like, if he was Hebrew, it wasn't Greek. Jesus is a Greek name for him. And actually, it's an interesting discussion. If you look at the way that the character portrayed in Western Christianity, the character Jesus has been portrayed, is very Hellenistic. It's been like westernized. You know what I mean? So there's huge components of the Roman religious traditions going way back 4,000 years, then coming back from Mithraism. And so that's why so much of Christianity, like 90% of Christianity in its Western form, is like paganism from Europe and from Babylonia. And because the Romans conquered the earth, took over all the stuff, brought it back to Rome and said, we collected the most gods. We got more power now. And they set it up in their deals and all that stuff. And then when Christianity came to its critical mass, quote unquote Christianity, right? When word of the truth had gotten around to the area of Rome, it was politically expedient for them to absorb that into the empire and make it the official state religion as a representative republic government. And so they signed the Edict of Milan and declared the entire world under Roman control to be now quote unquote Christian. But they had a different, like if you look at this thing right here, and you actually, like I remember the first time I actually read what that guy did and what he said, and I almost pooped my pants, man. I was blown away. I was like, what? Why? Like everything the stuff that he said in there is so hilarious and awesome because he's yelling at all the same stuff that I yelled at my brain the whole time I was growing up. You know what I mean? Like we're on the same page, kind of like it's righteousness, man. Mm-hmm. And he didn't have no patience for religious externalism either. He wasn't into that. He was into the real stuff, which is where the rubber meets the road, which is with people and helping them out. Yeah. That's the good stuff right there. And with understanding, the only way you can do that, by the way, is to have a reflective ability to allow something else that actually is good to reflect through your character, and then you become like a tool of something greater to be used for good against your own will.
I like that.
So
yeah,
there was a question. Brewer Transport Inc. wanted to know: did King Constantine have a had in the books of the Bible? Have a hand, I think he means, in the books of the Bible.
Yeah, that's an interesting conversation. So you can talk about like this when you get into textual criticism. There's a long discussion, and then again, what happens? The religious externalism. The guys who took the most schooling on the topic and have the most scholarly background will argue and get in a pissing contest with each other about who's the smarter Bible guy, and then they'll argue about which scroll is better all the time. As a general overview, yes, there's been a lot of influence in some ways on which deals got adjusted some ways, but for the most part, it's amazing how well preserved the main communication has actually been. Now, when you're talking Old Testament stuff, by the way, okay, what they call the Old Testament, the first 5 books is like the law, the Torah, is what the Jews call it, the Pentateuch. That's been perfectly preserved. Like, not by one jot or tittle has it been changed. And they can prove that. There's a lot of different ways that whoever wrote that stuff, man, had ways that were like, if you study cryptology, there's certain framework indicators you can put into the message. Or if you study genetics, which is also the author of that, apparently, there's frame shift mutation indicators. And you can see like that it's off base. If like one letter would get screwed up, and the scribes were very, very, very detailed. And a big part of the deal was not screwing it up. They wanted to preserve it. So the first 5 books, and that was vindicated later by the Dead Sea Scrolls when they found that. And Qumran, right? Wherever the hill is that Johnny Vauxhall was. I will tell you a story about that. Hey, some people push their luck.
Oh, Johnny.
Yeah, quite the tourist that guy is. But what the hell was I just talking about? Oh, the versions of the thing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that when you talk about the Old Testament stuff, man, it's like very, very well kept track of. When you talk about what is referred to commonly as the New Testament, which is the eyewitness accounts of the preacher in common English, right, that went around. Yeshua, or Joshua would be the English version of the name. That was actually his name would be like Joshua if you convert it to English. Of Nazareth. Jesus is most people would refer to him as like or identify as him. And What were we just talking about again, dude? Man, I'm telling you.
The Old Testament?
Do you have too much tea there, Rex?
I had too
Versus
much
the
tea.
new- You were talking about the new is more of the actual accounts witnessed versus the Old Testament, something.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the New Testament, I'm sorry, guys. So if you look at the New Testament situation, if you do a detailed, deep study into like where it was written or what language it was written in originally, it looks like at least 3 of the Gospels were written originally in Hebrew because the idioms are still in place, like mechanically so well in place that when it was in the Koine Greek, which is the oldest manuscripts they could find for a long time, up until the last few years, they found the actual original Hebrew copies now, like Shem Tov's Hebrew Matthew and the books of the Gospels in Hebrew. They did find a lot of those, like 10 of them or something like that. And but even in the Greek, it would point back to like, wow, the idioms are still in place, so mechanically accurate that it didn't make any sense in the Greek. And then when it was converted in the Greek to the English, a lot is lost in translation there. But the books were originally written in Hebrew. And so really, it's difficult to find a good, because there's not like a direct translation. If there was, there are versions, right? So the version like has to kind of paraphrase things so that it comes off in the English to make sense, sort of, because it's a totally different animal in terms of language.
So the Old Testament hasn't, or it's pretty true to its original form then.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's the problem with the New Testament deal is that the oldest copies we got are like 400 years old for the longest time when they made most of the versions of the Bible, right? And most of the versions of the Bible in the English are based on the Alexandrian manuscripts, right? Which are basically, it was kind of like a Egyptian, where Alexandria is on the Mediterranean there in Egypt. Alexandria was kind of the center where there was kind of a cult there of interesting cats that kind of had their own spin on things, and they'd adjust stuff a lot. And so their version of the Gospels and the entire New Testament was so messed up in a lot of ways, so foobar, that no one ever used them to transcribe or copy them. So they remained intact, like, because no one touched them. They just had dust on them. No one ever used them because it was the Alexandrian versions, which were kind of weird. And so the other ones, which were based on the receipt, like where the received text, if you look at that, it is a whole study. I don't know how bored you guys are going to get with this whole conversation. But to make a long story short, in English, there's only a couple deals that are based even on the better Greek versions, right? Up until the last couple of years. But yeah, they did find the original actual Hebrew versions, and it makes a heck of a lot more sense. And when there's but for the most part, all that being aside, that's getting into the weeds, in all honesty. If a guy reads like the 4th grader's version of any one of these books here, you're going to get the point. It's like not hard for people to understand. And that's an interesting rabbit trail topic that a lot of people will chase, like even myself there for about, 4 minutes or 7 minutes or whatever, right? That's a rabbit trail that a lot of adults chase down with no bearing of true fruit in their life, right? It's all about like, it's because it's interesting history. Textual criticism is interesting. Like history is interesting. Studying the scrolls, studying the languages, that's interesting for any kind of intelligent dude. The problem is that a lot of guys kind of get off on the discussion because then they're the smarter guys and then they can say all that fancy stuff, right?
Right, and then
Here's
higher, right?
Yep. And so I like to keep it where the rubber meets the road. In all honesty, what Jesus told Yeshua, or whatever you want to refer to him as, okay, because he knows what you're talking about. But like, what he told the scribes, he's like, you scribes will argue all day on this stuff, but these little kids get it. Like, and so they would be so far into the letter of the law and the detail of the law that they would miss the major points and themes of it. They were arguing about the mechanics, and they didn't even get the whole point of the deal. And he's like, if these little kids get it, you'll never get it in 10,000 years. These little tiny guys, they're the ones that are going to get it because they're not overthinking it. They're not using it for some weird purpose of trying to outsmart each other. They're playing a different game. They just want to know what Daddy said, right? So that's kind of where I like to travel to for the most part.
So there's an interesting question on here, and I think it is kind of important to note where we all come from on this, because he said, out of curiosity, what translation of the word do you read? And I don't think it's important to know which translation we read, but knowing like, because we, as a 3 who discuss this, are all at different levels of this.
Yeah, we're all on different paths, right?
Yes.
So I grew up in a very mainstream version of Christianity, like the Roman system, right? That was my background. I had like nuns hit me with sticks and stuff in school. I had a formal education in the Roman Catholic religion, right? That's how I was raised. And so I had that deal pretty good. My wife is Baptist. And so we went down that road for a while to explore. I mean, I read a lot, but then what the critical moment was when I started reading the stuff actually. Instead of listening to what other people were saying, I found the book that they were taking little snippets out of, and I'm like, okay, I want to hear what happened before that because it's interesting. And then when you start to see what the actual the head dude in charge was saying, I was like, wait a minute here, you guys are all doing the exact opposite of everything he was all about. And so that's where it got interesting. And so in terms of translations, you guys know rifle shooting, right? Because this is a long range shooting channel deal, right? Before you can start worrying about like Coriolis effect and all the tiny little subtleties, like, okay, what if like, before you worry about that, you got to lay down in a comfortable position and get in a natural point of aim established. You got to like being laying down, pointed sort of at the target, right?
Before you do any of that, though, man, you got to have your rifle zeroed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that too. But even to get there, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a lot of stuff that has to happen to go there. But basically, the objective is the gun sort of has to be pointed at the target before you worry about like exactly how to do all this other stuff. Or like guys like, oh, what barrel twist is better for this? I'm like, that's cool, but first we got to point the gun at the target. Then we'll worry about the barrel twist. You know, not only do you have to have a point at a target, then you got to get a steady point of aim. We went through this on the parable of the long range shooter, this parable of the sniper video I did a long time ago. But that is so true, and that's the problem with going down the bunny trail. On a lot of the details is guys will love to go into the details and get in a little religious like pee measuring contests, if you want to put it that way. And they'll measure, you know, who's the smarter guy. And the whole time they're pointing the rifle in what the exact opposite direction there should be, which is them figuring out what that guy told you and how we can adjust ourselves. You got to pry the own splinters out of our eyeballs before we go helping everybody all the time, right? Mm-hmm. And so a lot of guys are experts on like the little bolt on the car, and they don't even know that what it's attached to this giant like bus. The whole, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like you got to get a grand scheme of things first. And so that grand scheme of things is where the rubber meets the road. And that's why I like to keep it, because that's the main malfunction of religion, is getting lost in the weeds on religious-based arguments that bear no fruit whatsoever, even if you are correct on an issue, right? Even if you come out on top like, aha, my interpretation of Colossians 2 verse 14 was superior, and I proved it, and I won the battle, ha 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 ha. And then you go home, and what stature did you actually gain? So you made your other brother feel like a piece of poop,
Basically.
Right? Yeah, and then you won. Now you're smarter. Well, you've got your prize. Everyone thinks you're the smart guy. That's your prize that you won. Congratulations. But the prize from him, he ain't going to give you none, because you did it to be seen in the sight of men. It was a religious pissing contest the whole time, and all we wanted to do was to be the smarter guy. Someday they'll learn how smart I am and how right I was about all this deal. That's the malfunction I see all the time with religion. Doesn't matter what the subject is, man. They get lost in the weeds so bad, and it's the direction of the heart ain't even pointed at the target, man. So like first you got to come at it from the perspective of a small child. And that's why we're actually having this visit here, man. I'm trying to tell people to like, don't make it more complicated, make it more simple. You know what I'm saying? Like the more complex any system gets, the more moving parts they are, the harder it is to keep track of all that stuff. Jesus kept it really simple. We're just going to use Jesus. Yeah, you guys know that I know what his actual name really is. So we got to keep it colloquial for the rest of the crew, though. So everyone else out there doesn't know, so they know what we're talking about, right? Is that cool? You cool? Am I allowed to say that?
It's cool with me. I think everybody else can keep up to.
But the way he operated was he started off with like, all right, let's just start off with square one. What's the greatest commandment?
Don't be an asshole.
Yeah.
That's a good place. That's actually the second
thy
greatest
neighbor.
commandment.
Love thy neighbor.
You guys are very close. Yep. All right. So when Jesus asked this of, I think it was Nicodemus, he was one of the few of the religious dudes of his time. Jesus was a rabbi. He's a rabbi walking around, hanging out with other rabbis, and everyone kind of had their own angle, right? And he came at it, and he became very, very, very popular in a short amount of time based on his style was hitting people here because everyone knew he was right. And he was pointing out how the whole deal had degenerated into a political system where people can gain hierarchy and religious control over each other. And that was his malfunction. Not that they were wrong theologically on certain issues. They had the scribes and Pharisees knew their stuff, man. They had memorized the scriptures better than anyone in this channel or on the room. They understood it good, but their heart was in the wrong place. They did it to be superior to their brother. They wanted to be the smart religious guy. When it came to the scribes and the Pharisees, that's why I didn't get along with those guys very good, because their heart was always screwed up. But when Nicodemus came around, he's one of them guys who's kind of open-minded. He's like, man, this guy, like some of those guys are serious. Like they really do have a heart to want to find truth and righteousness, right? And so Jesus asked him the question, hey, what's the greatest commandment? And Nicodemus says, love your God with all your heart, all your mind, and all your strength, right?
Yep.
And then Jesus said, and he's the guy that made this deal popular, reminded them, because there's these things that called the 10 Commandments, and then there's 613 more that explain more detail. He said, you're exactly right. That is the greatest commandment. And there's a second like unto it. Love your brother as you love yourself. That's the one he said. Don't be an asshole.
Basically.
That's the two great commandments. But it's interesting because they're linked, right? The only way you can really not be an asshole, if we can say that. I'm sorry about that,
in
guys.
the Bible study, you're saying the word asshole.
Because Jesus would never curse, would he?
The word ass is actually in Numbers chapter 23 when the ass got beat. I'm going to keep it colloquial. Oh, we lost one. It couldn't take it. All right. Whoever can find in here where you can't use strong language or the local colorful language of the day, whoever can find that rule in here, I want you to tell me where it's at. It does tell you not to be corrupt with your language, which means gossiping. Or lying about stuff, or trying to do sinful behaviors with your languages, right? But using strong language is actually something even the man himself used quite often when you understand the translation. Pretty funny things happened a few times. We'll talk about that sometime.
Kardashians verse 2, somebody said?
Kardashians verse 2.
I can't remember the exact bit, but George Carlin had a really good one. We'll have to go back and watch it after we're done here. But he takes the 10 Commandments and condenses them down into a couple good ones. And
Okay.
It's funny, but also pretty heartfelt. We'll have to watch that later.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. But it's interesting, Ben. So like he always kept it simple, and so that brings us. What kind of people did he hang out with back in the day, right? So who would he hang out with if he came to Earth now, right?
Probably the religious guys with the red sweater vests, right?
Yeah, the red sweater vests, religious guys with the robes and the cool hats and the microphones up in front, the guys who knew their stuff, and like Jesus would go around handing out diplomas and shaking people's hands like, man, you are so smart on the Bible stuff, man. I'm impressed. No. When he came that one time back in the day, he went and hung out with like fishermen, which is like a job that might be frustrating from time to time and dirty. And that's like what is a fisherman like nowadays? Go to a fishing town and hang out with fishermen.
kind of a rougher folk, aren't
they? A little bit rough around the edges, maybe a little bit, but they're real. They're real folk. They're hardworking, blue-collar type folk. Who else did he hang out with?
Prostitutes.
Yeah, Mary Magdalene was one of his friends. A prostitute? Like, he might have been a roller derby coach if he was here today. I'm just joking. That's a joke. I actually coached roller derby once. I'm just teasing if any one of you is watching. I'm just being funny, okay? But that's the kind of folks he actually would hang out with, right?
And the sick?
And the sick people. And he hung out with, like, Roman centurions, which was the occupying force, like the unjust government power that had invaded and occupied Israel. Right? He hung out with them. He's like, I don't care about that stuff. You know what I mean? He's like, hey, so you're a Roman centurion, like a captain in the army or whatever. That's awesome. So like, your daughter's sick. You need her healed or something like that? Yeah, no problem.
So he just hung out with normal dudes then.
He hung out with whoever needed hanging out with.
Well, that's the thing. The people that needed help the most.
Yeah, he was the doctor that came to help the people that knew they were sick, man. That's why he hung out with them. The tax collectors.
Yeah.
The guys that were even like, kind of like, man, politically not good, right? And not only that, so he hung out and showed us, today we have political, like, left and right type stuff, right? You got the blue side and the red side, and they're always at each other's heels. So Jesus hangs out with the tax collector, which is on the pro-Roman side kind of things, right? Like taking taxes from the Israelites and giving it to the Romans. And he was a Jew from there who were doing that. And a lot of guys are pissed off about that. And he hung out with the Zealots too, who were also his apostles. Zealots are like militia guys. You know what I mean? Like, screw the Romans, we'll fight them off. Let's get them. Let's let's have a war. I mean, that's what they were into, right? So he hung out with the Romans and the guys that were helping the Romans and the Zealots and the prostitutes and the doctors. Like one of the guys was a doctor, the smart guys, right? But who didn't he hang out with? And fishermen, like normal guys, teenagers, a lot of them were teenagers, like young guys, you know what I mean? Most of them were probably pretty young, actually.
Who didn't he hang out with?
He didn't hang out with church people very much, man. And when he went there, he only went there to yell at them a lot of times. Sometimes he'd preach, but a lot of times they'd run him out of there.
He'd shred him.
Yeah, actually, that's the way it happened a lot of times. Sometimes he'd go in there and blow their minds. Like when he's a young kid, he was reading the scriptures, and his folks couldn't find him. He's teaching the rabbis, like explaining how the stuff really worked, like blowing their minds with just honesty. It's amazing what happens when you just get rid of your own, like, dude, like I've been corrected in life so many times on so many issues, whether it be shooting or guitar playing or religion or whatever, right? Or politics or any issue like this. I've been corrected so many times that I'm like comfortable with being corrected.
Comfortable with being wrong.
Yeah, I don't mind being wrong, dude. I'd rather someone tell me how to do it right than just stay wrong all the time.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So a teachable person is the kind of person that he would look for, right? And so that's interesting. But who is unteachable? People that already got everything figured out. People who already know everything, you can't teach them shit, can you? Because they already know everything.
And they make up their own laws.
And they make up their own little laws. And here's where he really flipped his boat. They come up to him, for example, him and the apostle dudes would be hanging out on the Sabbath day, right? Shabbat, which is, according to the commandment, you don't go to work that day. That's the day you're just kind of hanging out, doing whatever. And the law is pretty simple. It just says don't work, don't make anyone go to work, stuff like that, right? Mm-hmm. So they lay around and they'd be eating grain and stuff like that. Well, there was a whole group of religious dudes that had made all these extra laws that were like on top of. So God has his group of laws, and they're pretty simple, pretty easy stuff. You know what I mean? Pretty simple stuff. Then man comes along and makes 8 bazillion freaking extra laws to make, these are all based on his. Actually, what it's based on is you being in charge. Because when they create that, exactly, HR 5717, for example, how many laws are we under today, man? Anyways, they made so many other laws around God's law that they created a maze that they made that nobody else knew but them. And then when they create the maze, then the maze master. They're like, no. And then they created a religion, which they have made. God didn't make that religion. They made it up. So they made up other rules that were extra on the deal, right? So him and the dudes are hanging out eating grain. Some rabbi somewhere along the line, because religion's like, when the truth was delivered to Moses on Mount Sinai, right? And like God spoke down from a cloud of fire above the mountain, like with a super speaker, blowing everyone's socks off, like really loud PA system, like scared the whole, like 2 million people were like, whoa, When he spoke the truth, everyone kind of got the idea, and they still had a problem. They still struggled. They had to wander around the wilderness. Think 1,500 years later, though, things kind of get a little bit more off kilter, and they kind of get off track a little bit. So he had to come to kind of straighten it back out. And what happened is people kept adding stuff, and then they'd subtract some other things. So they thought that their own man-made laws were as good as God's laws, right? And that's one big deal that Jesus didn't like, because man-made religious laws. He was not into that. So the Pharisees would come over. Why do you violate the traditions of the elders and the Pharisees by harvesting grain on the Sabbath day? And he's like, where does it say that in the commandment that I can't lay around and I'm resting, I'm eating the grain, I'm not harvesting it. It's not like I'm at work. There's not a huge amount of detail in the fourth commandment. Like if you read Exodus 20 and read the 10 commandments, it's pretty short, you know what I mean? And then there's other laws, the 613 laws, like, where exactly did God say I wasn't allowed to reach over here, eating this grain and go like this? Show me. And basically they're offended that him and his guys were not obeying their laws that they made up, see, because they made extra laws, because they were going to be holier even than God could be, right? And he's like, Jesus' answer for him was, why do you guys make void the law of my Father in heaven, or, you know, our Father in heaven, right? Because he's all our Father in heaven, right? Why do you make void his laws with your traditions? Why are you doing it? And they're like, they couldn't handle it. So they killed him. Yeah. And for other things too. What?
On that same line,
There's other stuff he said too.
a few people wrote in then, so how do you feel about the sixth commandment then?
All right, so you want to go through the commandments? What? Yeah.
Thou shalt not kill.
Thou shalt not kill. Okay, so it's interesting. The first four commandments has to do about talking about how to love God. Number one, I'm the Lord your God. You ain't going to have no other gods in front of me. Don't bring them around me, right? I'm your God. Don't worship other ones. Okay? Rule number two, right? Don't make no idols. Don't be a pagan and make all these like big grotesque things like Beelzebubs, and like the Canaanites would like make big metal Santa Claus looking things that they would like cook people inside for sacrifice rituals. He told them not to do that anymore. He's like, okay guys, no more of this kind of heathenism kind of stuff. You're getting carried away, making up gods, right? So I can't make a big cat statue in the backyard and light a fire under it and get it all glowing red and go out there with a black hoodie and go, whoa, blah, blah, blah. Like, that's commandment number two, is not doing stuff like that. We can't make up our own idols. We can't just pull them out of the air, right? Commandment number three is don't take his name lightly. It doesn't say you can't say GD, is the common colloquial phrase that a lot of people use. And it's a little bit crude because it's so socially crude, right? So in that way you're kind of, it's disrespectful to use sometimes, you know, to use the phrase GD. I ain't going to say it on here just because the guys want to be nice to you.
Gosh darn.
But that's not what he's talking about at all, by the way. Yeah, gosh darn it, right? The full version. Because first of all, God ain't his name. And second of all, God damns things all the time. There's a lot of stuff he doesn't like. So it's like, maybe you condemn something that he didn't like. So that's not even what he's talking about. It says, do not take the name in vain. Like, don't be using it lightly. Like, if you're going to claim that that's the guy up there, you better be serious, because he's going to hold you accountable to his standards at the pace at which you learn his character. Then you're responsible to adhere to those standards, right?
Exactly.
Okay, so that's and then the fourth one is, hey, I made the universe in 6 days. I rested on the seventh day as a commemoration of me being in charge of the universe. This is God talking, right? That's what he says. In commemoration of making the universe, you're going to rest on the seventh day and keep it holy and not do any work like I did. So it's like pointing back to the creation and acknowledging that he's not only just a God, but he is the one that built everything. He's identifying himself as the all-powerful God that made the universe specifically. And the way to observe that is to follow tradition that he did and sit back and kick back once. And plus, humans need rest. I'm finding this out the hard way, Lou.
Yeah, you are, buddy.
Yeah, and you are too, by the way. Poor Lou, man. This guy's been working his butt off.
Yeah. You know, if I wanted to work 5 days in a row, I would have gotten a real job, Rex.
Yeah. So it's funny because, like, there's the four commandments. The first four are telling you about God. That's all he needs from you. Know that he's him. Don't worship other ones. Don't make big giant cat statues or owl statues or worship owls out in the woods in California or wherever the hell. And any of that kind of stuff, don't do that. Number 3, don't take his name lightly. Number 4, observe that he created the universe by resting on the 7th day. That's the first 4 rules. That's not hard.
Easy.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of was looking forward to making a giant cat statue in the backyard. Yeah. But being that he said not to, I guess I won't do that, okay?
There go our plans for the weekend.
Now, it's interesting that what the next of the 6 commandments have to do with the second great commandment, which is how to love your brother as yourself. Yeah. What's the first one of those? That the first commandment he has dealing with people. You know what it is? Murdering. Nope, it's not murder, actually. It's something different.
Is it your elders?
It's, yeah, your elders, but it goes beyond that. Honor thy mother and father.
Honor.
For if you do that, you'll have long days on the earth. If you take care of your parents and honor them and respect them, guess what happens? When you have your kids, they'll see that you respect and honor your parents and take care of them, because life, as you get older, hurts more. And all this bad stuff happens, and then, like, you need help. Right? You know what I'm saying? So if you go through the motions of doing your best to honor them and be respectful to them, guess what happens to you? You just pass that trait on to your kids, and your days will be longer. It's all practical stuff, man.
Well, yeah, it's all good, positive stuff.
Yeah, it's like karma, man. Like, if you take care of your folks, maybe your kids will see you doing that, and they'll say, wow, oh, like, these people are a treasure. And they'll treasure you. And then you get the good stuff too. The gift that keeps on giving, Lou.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's where the rubber meets the road, though. That's the first thing you said before not killing anybody, by the way. Honor your mother and father, okay?
Keyword.
Very important. Because they're also in charge of making sure you get the full download of information properly. That's very important. So that means you must respect them. They've been there longer than you. They might know some extra stuff like that. Like, my parents are so stupid or whatever. Like, well, maybe that's true on a certain topic or whatever, but who knows? But honor them. That doesn't mean if they tell you to do something wrong to go do it, but you can still honor them as in that role. Now we're getting to the fun commandment, which is thou shalt not do what? Murder. That's the actual word used. Yep. It doesn't say you can't kill nobody. It just says you can't murder people, okay? The lawful application of combat is legal if you read the whole book. Because if a bad guy comes in here and tries raping and murdering and stealing all my stuff and hurting everybody, I'm going to lay some hurt on him a little bit with this, right? Actually, this is my number one choice because it's not going to wake up the neighbors, okay? That's the lawful application of self-defense type stuff, which is totally fine in the book, according to the book. Aside from that deal, yeah, don't murder people. It doesn't say in the English. It say do not kill. Okay.
Okay.
So we got to the murder question. All right.
And then 7.
Yeah, and there's other commandments after that, like don't steal people's stuff. Don't like
take somebody's wife.
Yeah. Don't covet the wife. You know what I mean? Like, in biology, dudes are going to be attracted to hot chicks, guaranteed. It's called the Y chromosome. I'm sorry. I can't help it. It's like just automatic, right, Lou?
That's what perpetuates the species.
Yeah, that's what it does. Exactly, right? That's actually fulfilling the very first commandment from the old days, which was be fruitful and multiply. You know what I mean? So, like, that's why that drive is there. He built it into there. So it's not saying don't be a man or a woman with those attractions and all that stuff. But it's saying don't covet other people's, you know. Mm-hmm. It's like stealing their spouse. They've got like a special connection going on. Like, don't mess it up for them. Yeah. And then don't covet all their, you know, don't lie is another big important one, right? Don't be telling people, don't be reporting false information on the battlefield, because that doesn't help the tribe at all.
No false news.
Yeah, and bearing false witness particularly means saying that people, like in a trial situation especially, you know what I mean? Like, that's important not to lie, because consequences happen when you miscommunicate the truth.
Exactly.
So you can't bear false witness against other people, for sure, because that hurts them. But also, don't bear false witness against yourself, too, man. And that's one of the big malfunctions of the churches that I wanted to rant about when I started this thing earlier. Like, I don't know how long we've been on here.
55 minutes.
Perfect. Cool. But I am who I am, bro. Like, I don't know how not to be what I am. So as I get sanctified osmotically and naturally through a long length of time, I'm way better than I was, right? But it's still got quite a ways to go. We can all get a little Western from now and then. I got in trouble a little while ago. Did you hear about this, Lou?
I don't know. Did I?
I was hanging out with some kind of like rough dudes.
Oh yeah, I remember.
Yeah, I was hanging out with some SF dudes when I was down there in Carolina.
Oh, yeah.
And then we did like a live stream. And then we're in the bar, see? And someone said a naughty word in there, and someone drank some beer.
Oh, my goodness.
Hey
man,
So
I ain't bearing false witness against myself. If I don't know not to cuss when I'm hanging out with the rough dudes, and whatever, I get it. That's fine. But I am being adjusted. I am open for correction, so I'm working on it. Okay.
But that's the important part of being a human critter, is being open for that correction.
Yeah, and I am open for the correction
And-
as much as I can be.
And that's part of that not bearing false witness against yourself.
But also, I'm going to do a little psychological projection against them at the same time, so I can save face a little bit, right? Like, dude, you know what you're talking about, right? Like, come on, man. Out of all this stuff.
But I mean, that's why Jesus died on the cross, is because we're sinners and we sin, and although we're supposed to recognize when we do that and try to correct ourselves, that's the whole point of him coming down.
The Creator has provided mechanisms by which we can be cleansed of our sins. Okay? And we'll get into that in a further one. That's basically admitting it, stop doing it as much as you can, or at least try to stop doing it. That's called repenting, and then asking for forgiveness for it. And then basically the art of admitting it and repenting is kind of like got the forgiveness part built in. And there are mechanisms by which that is most properly communicated and fulfilled. We'll talk about that later. And then the other deal too is like, don't covet everyone else's stuff. Don't be jealous of people. If someone else got blessed on something, don't be jealous of them. Think, because in the where the rubber meets the road on that deal is when you're looking at all the other stuff that someone else has, whether that be, I don't know, maybe they're smart, maybe they're in really good shape, maybe they got more money, maybe they got a cooler house, maybe they have more credentials, maybe they're more, whatever the hell, right? Whatever people think is to be coveted, right? You're not like acknowledging all the cool stuff that he gave you, though, too. See, that's the problem. And then when you're busy fixated on trying to tear down someone else's little fort that they built in the woods, you're not building your own damn fort in the woods. Like, go use your stuff for what you got, man. Like,
and be grateful. Be grateful, because if you're grateful, and this is a saying I've used before, but if you're grateful, you can't be hateful. You can't hate your neighbor if you're being grateful for what you have.
yeah. So that's where the rubber meets the road on that stuff. It's all like real life stuff that people really, I don't think, would have a problem arguing with.
And it's also simple that, like we said earlier, a child could get it, but we convolute and complicate things so much with...
Especially when you start adding rules that ain't in the book.
Exactly.
Once you start playing that game, then it's just a pissing contest for all eternity. How dare you do something that I told you not to do? It's like, excuse me, are you my daddy? I don't think so. You know what I mean? Like, plus, interesting, in the culture that Messiah grew up in, right? Back in the day, one of the commandments for kids, for little kids, is they just listen to mommy and daddy. Honor thy mother and father. That's the commandment for little kids, like, because they don't understand all these dynamics we're talking about. So if you're a kid and you're little and you haven't understood the law yet, you haven't become a son of the law yet, okay? That's why they have bar, son, mitzvah, law, son of the law. They actually write down the entire scriptures and memorize it. And then once they know the scriptures and understand it and study it, memorize it, now you are a son of the law. You are no longer a son of your parents when it comes to, now you're a son of the law, of the Father. Now you're directly responsible for your own actions in between you and him. And then you become an adult. And then you move out of the village. I mean, back in the day, it was like different than it is now. Nowadays, we don't let, anyways. But it's interesting, like, that's the kind of stuff they would communicate back in the day. It was hardcore, and it was useful. Pretty awesome. And then some of them still do it pretty good today, too.
So I had an interesting comment come in. I was going to see if
I'm ready. Hit me with it. Now, yeah, let's
Are
have
you
a visit.
ready?
I'm ready for the visiting part.
It's an intense one.
Mm.
So David Smith wrote in, I reckon all the kids who die from leukemia would understand this.
What's that?
His comment was, I reckon all the kids who die from leukemia would understand this.
Understand what?
The God and the law.
I don't get the leukemia part.
I think what he's saying is, because you were talking about how children understand the Bible,
Mhm.
like right off the bat, and they don't need to really complicate it. So I think what he's saying is, well, they're dying from leukemia. You know, are they going to understand?
I'm sensing a loaded comment. I'm not sure exactly where it's coming from. The general point, without getting all wrapped up into some deal, because it sucks. I had cancer, man. We'll do a review on that sometime. It sucks. It's horrible.
Oh, he said the part about coveting.
Coveting? I don't know. It's not. I guess a guy will have to articulate that question more clearly for me to know what's being asked.
I'm a little confused.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I mean, in general, what I meant with the kids comment, what Jesus was talking about, he's like, these little kids get it. Like when God's talking about like, love God, do this, do that. Like it's pretty simple stuff. Love your Father in heaven. That's not hard. There's 2 commandments: love God and love your neighbor. That's it. Pretty easy. If you do that, then you're set. Because all the details will be filled in naturally later.
Yeah, the rest will fall in place.
Yeah, it falls into place even if you don't know, because even if you don't have the copy of the book, if you truly love God and love your brother, you're doing... The reason that huge giant book exists is to explain what all that stuff means. For people that are, having a hard time understanding it. Yep.
I understand more. The kid would want to live until he gets old enough, which would mean he'd covet life.
Interesting. Yeah. Interesting commentary. Got any other questions in there?
Yeah. I did have another one that's a tough one.
Oh dear, here we go. I'm scared.
Okay. What about gays being murdered for their sin?
Gays being murdered for their sin.
Right.
Okay, I need to be clear on that deal because that's a commonly misunderstood deal. Sometimes people have, because I'm a biologist too, right? I'm a scientist. So I understand there's a whole spectrum of hormones that happens in humans. And some of it drives people in different ways, okay? Sometimes people have different attractions that's not in the bell curve of the biology. Like the X chromosome is supposed to do certain things, but sometimes the stuff gets jammed up in the biology, and then there's attraction that makes you want to go this way, right? That's not the sin. Being attracted is not the sin. Mm-hmm. The sin is actually sodomy, which goes for... All right, we're about to get adult language here, guys. And no, but if you're talking about it, that goes for men and women or for men on men. You can't put stuff in the wrong connecting plug, okay? That's the sin. And there's biological reasons for that too. It's really not a good idea.
Well, and when it comes down to it, if you look at it from just a biological standpoint, you are not able to have children if that's how you're operating.
Yeah.
And so you automatically sort of end your line by yourself. Mm-hmm. If that makes sense. You're not recreating.
Yeah, so the law there and I think what it was happening is a lot of times you're going to read stuff in the law, especially if you get into some of the history. This book is full of a lot of history too, in context. There were some outfits that got way out of control. Anyone ever been to Vegas? By the way, I'm going back there, but we're going to talk about guns. But the land of vomit and perfume, that's nothing compared to if you read a history book about what some certain places were into. I mean, it wasn't just that. It was really unhealthy, destructive behavior that was going to destroy the earth.
But it was a hell of a party.
It was one hell of a party, apparently. But yeah, so that's, if you read the full context, and if you study archaeology, you'll see that that's the context in which they're laying down some of the maximum application law. And by the way, that's not just for example, right? There's 2 different interpretations there's not 2, but there's multiple ways you can enforce laws, right? Mm-hmm. For example, if you get pulled over and you're a real jackass, you might get a bigger speeding ticket than if you just, oh man, I'm sorry, I was in a hurry, I admit it. He might let you off, right? the laws were enforced that way too, and it's even written down. I mean, they had a legal system in place. It's not like my kid disrespected me, let's stone him now. That's not the way that deal was done typically, unless there's a really bad group of judges. You know what I mean? But it's very similar actually to what the American court system is supposed to be based on. So there was a procedure they had to go in place. You had to prove that they're guilty. You had to see what it was, and if they have other corrective mechanisms in place. But sometimes the maximum punishment for certain deals was pretty harsh. And when you're living in a nation of people living in tents and a nomadic system, going through the desert with very limited resources, there's certain things that they had to put into place to like not die out there. And so you got to read all into the context on the situation and it's hard for a person sitting on a couch in front of an electronic device in this modern age to understand the archaeology and the reality of history back in those days. It was rough territory, man. Living out in the bush, you have to really, really have your poop in a group to even survive. Yeah.
Sorry, some of the questions I'm scratching my head. That's not a question.
You know, sometimes people find that one, if they, like some people decide, I'm not going to like this deal, therefore I'm going to find the craziest damn verse I can find possibly. I'm going to extract it out of context and then use it as ammunition against it, right? And it's like, did you read the part before where they're like barbecuing like babies, for example, and then like trying to interpret the screams so that you could like make a better call to Molech or whatever the hell? I mean, that's the archaeology. That's what was going on in a lot of those cases. I mean, it's pretty hardcore what I just said, but that's what people do sometimes.
So, one of the questions earlier was, like, if the law was done away with, what do we repent for?
If the law was done away with, what do we repent for? That's a very good question. And I think that's one of the misunderstood things that happens a lot is when Jesus' first speech, let's just go there, okay? There's a lot of controversy on what his point was because he was saying some stuff that was different. He was he was throwing away the law of man, the law of religion, the law of Pharisees. So there's that whole group of laws. That's what Jesus was fighting against. But then there's another group of laws, which is smaller and more concise and more smart, which is the ones that God said, right? So there's those God's laws, and then there's a huge, giant encyclopedia volumes worth of man's laws, right? He kind of said, so he had maybe taken task with some of the man-made laws. And he was taking people back to the heart of the law, which was the original written word, right? So to be very straight on that, he had to explain what his intent was. He did not come, I think you can read this in Matthew chapter 6. His very, very first words that came out of his mouth on his ministry were, I have not come to destroy the law or the prophets. I have come to establish them. I tell you, verily, verily, I tell you, that not one jot and not one tittle shall in any wise pass from any of the law, specifically referring to the book here. You would have been talking about the Torah, the first 5 books, the laws of Moses. It's not really the laws of Moses, it's the laws of God being written down by Moses. And some of them were written down by God, 10 of them were. Or the prophets. So he also said that the prophets, not one jot or tittle shall pass away until all things are fulfilled. Not half of the things, not just a couple parts of the things, but all things, like until everything is fulfilled. And there's still not a lot of stuff that ain't fulfilled yet. We're still waiting on the rest of the movie to pan out. So his first preaching on the Sermon on the Mountain was saying, I haven't come to destroy the law, I've come to establish it. He just came to clarify the law. It's not a new covenant, it's a renewed covenant. The car was like a 57 Chevy. My brother explained it to me the other day on the phone pretty well. We were talking about this exact topic. It's like people get confused about the New Testament versus the Old Testament. They think that and this is what Christianity has done by and large, is taken the Old Testament and thrown it in the garbage can. And then they just grab the New Testament and that's all they read out of. And they interpret it all through Greek and Roman mythology and logic.
How does that fit in with the Chevy metaphor? I want to hear this.
Oh, the Chevy?
Yeah.
So the old law was the covenants, the responsibilities, the agreement, the contracts, right? Were written down in the old law. and then it got dusty and in disrepair because religious people had thrown it aside because they're busy building some other project, which was their own crap.
So they throw the old version in the junk pile, basically.
Yeah, so basically what Jesus came and did was he fixed up he renewed the covenant. Like he fixed it up and polished it up and brought people back to the heart of the law. Which, by the way, let's use Passover as an example, right? For a Christian guy, right? What is Passover, if you think about it? Think about that one. By keeping the law of Moses, you're keeping the law of what the gospel message was supposed to be about. If that makes sense to you. Think about that one. But yeah, specifically, I think that there's some writings that Paul did specifically where he talks about, do I say we should disregard the law or sin? No, God forbid. We have come to establish the law. So Paul was specifically referring to man-made laws and our burden from those laws and our burden from being guilty of our sins from God's laws. That's what was thrown in the garbage was that. That's a good question. I need to make this clear though. It's not our adherence to the law that gets us anyplace, guys. Nobody can do it perfectly. Nobody can even get it halfway as perfect. We're all totally screwed up. It's about what direction your heart is going. And if you ever, it's two things. Love your Father in heaven, and He'll take care of you. You're not going to escape Him. And if you love your Father in heaven for real, He ain't going to let you get away from you. You can go through some really rough shit like I have, or like any of us have, right? I've been through some bad stuff, man. We could tell stories about it sometime in my life. Some like really, 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 really hard stuff, just like all of you have, man. But like, it's not me that gets it there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, there's two rules. If you love Him for real, He ain't letting you get away from Him. He will get you forgiven. And He sent His mechanisms to do that. But when that happens, other things happen. If you truly do love Him, you're going to start to have more empathy for people because you're going to take on His character. See? Like you're going to actually take on His character, which is loving people, helping them out, empathy, mercy, justice too, by the way. Okay? Like He doesn't have no tolerance for crimes and stuff like that. Bad ones, right? But like, you'll take on the character. That's a process of sanctification, is where obedience to the law would come from naturally after you love Him. You don't start obeying Him until after you truly love Him. There's no way you could obey Him if you didn't love Him. You know what I mean?
It's true.
So it's like, that's the reality. And that's where people get all bent out of shape. And people like to have theology discussions and, they have different words for different terms and how stuff works. But I like to keep it simple. That's why the little kids get it. And like, of course, if I love Daddy, like as a 3-year-old kid's like, oh, Daddy, he knows that Daddy loves him. He's not freaking worried that he's just going to like go throw him in the garbage can or something, or what, you know what I mean? They get it. And they know that whatever they need will be provided. And as they grow and get older and wiser, they might go through some adolescence, but do they ever really get away from him? No. Because it's a real deal. And so, I don't know if that makes sense. I think it makes sense.
I like that, man.
Well, I like it a lot. It's not our performance that gets us there. It's His grace. So if you want to get all Christian on your terms, okay, if you want to use the words of churchianity, I would say, yeah, you're saved by grace alone. No works can get you saved. But that is a loaded term too, though. See that word, you know what I'm saying? Because that's you appropriating the grand prize. Like I would rather just love Him and not give a crap about what I get or don't get. How about them apples? That's a whole different level right there. That's what I want people to shoot for. When we're shooting at our targets, I'm aiming small, right? That's what we got to shoot for, guys. It's just loving Him regardless of, if you get a prize or not at the end. If I do my chores, Daddy, will you give me a candy cane? How do I get the candy cane? Say these 3 prayers, son, and you'll get the candy cane. That's the whole attitude of like, what do you got to do to get saved? Like, dude, love your parents and they'll feed you whatever you need to live. Don't worry about it. If you really love them, then you're fine. Same thing. If our parents can be that nice to us and they're evil and we're evil and we're all fallen humans, how much more can our Father in heaven do for those who simply ask him of things, if you love him. It's freaking really easy.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, it's very easy.
Any other good commentary?
Any other good commentaries?
Just lots of people enjoying the conversation.
My God.
Oh man. There was a question about Paul. It's from Dale W. Said Paul said he was preaching a complete new revelation.
Revelation?
Revelation. The church age in.
All right, maybe I should read this, huh?
Yeah.
Paul said he was preaching a complete new revelation, the church age, Ephesians chapter 3, 1 through 10. What say ye concerning this passage? Okay, so first off, when you get into the writings of Paul was a very educated man, to know his background. He was studied and stuttered. Actually, he wasn't a very good verbal communicator all the time either.
No. He wrote a lot, right?
That was like a Freudian slip right there. But yeah, Paul was very well educated under Gamaliel. And so he could cite every single word of the Torah verbatim in a second. Like he knew his law really good. And he was a super overzealous Pharisee dude that really was into it. And he went around persecuting dudes for this new angle of the interpretation, which they thought was heresy at the time, because there were some misunderstandings. And so when he writes his letters, you got to see who he's writing his letter to, first off. Sometimes he's writing it to other Pharisee guys who are all bent out of shape on some kind of weird, super detailed deal. And so what Peter wrote, because Peter was a fisherman, Peter likes to keep it simple. I'm a fisherman. Me. Right? I can relate to Peter. Peter told us this about Paul's writings. Our brother Paul writes many things that are very difficult to understand. And those that are not learned in the law, the first 5 books, will twist our brother Paul's writings to their own destruction. That's what Peter said in the Bible about Paul's writings. So my suggestion would be to understand what Paul was really trying to get at. You have to be like a master of the Torah first. And then you can start to see what angle he's coming at. Because a lot of times you can read a verse or a line or a paragraph of Paul's writings, and then you'll go through the entire book, and you get through a couple chapters, and then you'll see he completely switches gears because he's making a long, huge point of an example of stuff not to do.
Are you saying context is important?
Yeah, the context is really important.
Okay.
Yeah. So when it comes to Paul's writings, I think it's most important for us to work on our natural point of aim first. And then it all starts to get revealed. And what was the specific question that he was referring to in the passage with Paul there?
He was asking about, let me get back up there. Paul said he was preaching a complete new revelation, the church age.
I don't remember that. Let me look. Can you look that up?
Yeah.
Sorry. Well, Ephesians 3, 1 through 10. Okay, got another question while he looks that up?
Yep.
Because the church age, I don't remember that being in there specifically. I think that might be someone added in something.
People are interested in your epigenetic memory stuff.
Sure.
I know we talked about it in a podcast.
Uh-huh.
Mostly to deal with traumatic experiences and epigenetic memory.
Sure. Yeah, we can talk about that. So our biology, we're fearfully and wonderfully made. I'll just put it like that. If you pick up a dude, when I really started getting hardcore on this stuff, was when I studied biology at the university. And I was that one student that actually read the biology textbook. Nobody else did that. They would just study for their little tests, and then they got their grade in biology, and they checked off the box, and they ran through. I was interested in it, so I read and studied. Just reading it doesn't count too, but if you study the text, it's interesting. But I read biology because it was freaking crazy, man. It's the stuff that is inside on microbiology type stuff, dude. It is crazy. It's infinitely, one cell, a paramecium, is more complex than an entire giant Starship Enterprise. And on the infinite level more complex. It's really interesting how stuff is put together now that they got good microscopes. You can actually see the moving parts on the really tiny levels. And so they're finding out a lot about DNA. I remember learning about DNA, and they called it junk DNA. And I always thought that was dumb. I'm like, excuse me, Mr. Professor, man. So all the DNA that, like, there's only certain DNAs that code for proteins, right? And then it makes proteins, little building blocks that we're made out of. All that other stuff is like still DNA, but it's not making a protein. So the biology guys are like, well, if it's not making a protein, it must be garbage. Better throw it away. It's junk DNA. I'm like, whoa, easy. Is it possible that there's something else in the DNA that they didn't know about? That, like, other information or like rules of instructions or like when to turn stuff on and off or what? You know what I'm saying? Or the circuitry behind it or what, you know? And I always remember thinking that even like way before they discovered epigenetics and like what a lot of that other stuff was encoding for, like genetic memory. And it's a controversial topic among scientists. I know there's like a lot of details. People go way the hell out on the branch. I kind of like that branch. I think it's interesting. But like, yeah, dude, there's some stuff in there. But sin, for example, is passed on genetically, biochemically into our bodies. When I do something, I pass it on. It says in the book, by the way, to the third and fourth generation at least. So like if you got a certain issue or a problem and you haven't like decided not to do it anymore, you're going to pass that on genetically. It phosphorylates the DNA and puts a marker there on that behavior pattern with all the settings and adjustment knobs in your entire body for that, whatever the heck it is. And that can be for good or for bad. So if you're doing like horrible things, then you pass that trait on, and those settings are recorded and frozen in there, and they go on to your kids. If you're doing stuff that makes you a better person, those traits are passed on. That's why the blessings are passed on. It's interesting, man. I'll tell you that.
So you probably won't want.
Oh, did you find it, bro? Why are we talking about here? So I'm going to read it out of context because I don't want to read the entire book again. Is this where exactly are we at?
Which one was it, Casey? The numbers
three. Hold on, I'll go back here. 3,
Sorry.
1 through 10.
Chapter 3.
Chapter 3, 1 through 10.
All right. We're going to read us a little bit of Paul. For this cause, I, Paul, the prisoner of Jesus Christ for you, the Gentiles. Okay, so he's talking to the Gentiles here, right? That's a big clue. If ye have heard the dispensation of the grace of God, which is given me to you word, how by that revelation he made known unto me the mystery, as I wrote afore in a few words, whereby ye read, ye may understand my knowledge in the mystery of Christ. Okay, and yeah, this is Shakespearean English, so bear with me. Which in other ages was not made known unto the sons of men, is now revealed unto the holy apostles and prophets by the Spirit. That the Gentiles should be fellow heirs and of the same body and partakers of his promise in Christ by the gospel, whereof I was made a minister according to the gift of grace of God given unto me, and the effectual working of his power unto me, who am less than the least of all saints. I like that attitude. That's cool. Where the hell did I just go? I lost it, dude. I looked at the camera. Should preach among the Gentiles the unsearchable riches of Christ, and to make all men see what is the fellowship of the mystery from the beginning of the world that hidden in God, who created all things by Jesus Christ, and to the intent that now unto the principalities and powers in the heavenly places might be known by the church the manifold wisdom of God. So if I'm remembering and interpreting this properly, what he's expounding on there is basically preaching unto the Gentiles. There are mechanisms in the Torah by which the Gentiles are brought into the tribe of Israel, and they're grafted into the vine. That he's talking about the Torah there. He's talking about how he is one of the guys bringing them in through the Passover ceremony. Okay? You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm talking about? There's a certain sacrifices that are made for certain things. Anyways, but that was the Passover. If my understanding is correct, and you guys study this up and check on me, because I might be, don't believe what Rex says. Always study it for yourself. But They would come into the tribe of Israel through the Passover. Once you would participate in Passover, you are then grafted into the vine of Israel. Grafting is a process where you take a vine and then you cut off the branch and you add a branch from a different vine onto there, and it becomes part of the same vine. It's like anyone can come into the tribe. That's way back in the Old Testament. He's expounding on that. That's all. He's saying that, like, he's revealing the mystery of how all that stuff would be communicated later. And as the preacher that Yeshua was in those days, doing such a good job, making it so simple, putting the rubber to the road, to where fishermen and Romans and Gentiles and prostitutes and Pharisees and everybody could get it, right? The real hardcore mysteries that were kind of cryptic, hidden because it hadn't all come to light exactly how it worked yet, were being revealed and taught better and explained and fulfilled too. So, yeah, that's what I think he's saying. Does that help? Does that kind of sort of answer your question?
There was another question here. So I bring it up by Hard Target. It's not specifically religious.
Okay.
But I do know you know quite a bit about this, so I thought I'd bring it up.
Yep.
So Hard Target writes, Rex, what are your thoughts on a DARPA project that people call voice-to-skull technology? If you study a lot of these mass shootings, these people start hearing voices weeks before they snap.
Yeah, it's interesting. I ain't going to comment on that.
Okay, no comment.
That's some top secret technology that some cats use. But they did use it on Desert Storm Part 1, I think.
It's been around that long?
It's been around for a long time.
So there's another question that's a good one for you. I'm sorry if I pronounce this wrong. I think it's Liji. How do you guys feel about Hinduism and other religions? Do you agree that religion can be scrutinized?
Scrutinized? I think everything in life should be scrutinized.
It should be.
In a loving, kind way. Because humans are all humans. None of us is better than no one else, right? And so, like, I've got a lot of friends who are Hindu. I've got a lot of friends that are Buddhist. I got a lot of friends that are all kinds of different things, right? And I think that the best way, man, that's really a question on evangelism, tactics, and strategy. Like, churchianity's approach in the old days, during the Dark Ages, was to conquer them and then just, like, make them do it. Make them convert now,
Yep.
right? Or tell them all about how they'll be burned up if they don't do it properly. Scare the shit out of them.
Yep.
That'll learn them. Better join or you're going to burn up. Sorry, I don't know if this is too loud on the microphone. But, yeah, that's one way of doing things, I suppose. The way that the man handled it, when he talked to people that weren't in his deal, right? Because, like, what had been passed on through Moses, the law of the creator of the universe and all that kind of stuff, right? Was like super holy and sacred, but it was also good news too because everyone was invited to the table. They were the nation of priests. Their job was to communicate that God existed to the entire world. So everyone's welcome on board that choo-choo train kind of deal. You know what I'm saying? But they would have to come through the process of Passover is what the Jews would call it. Christians, man, there's so many different weird versions of Christianity and different weird ideas that they got in there and how exactly they interpret it. But when they talk about the sacrifice that was made for the sins, that's what I'm talking about. So coming in and being grafted in the vine is for everybody if they participate in that deal. Does that make sense?
You bet.
I don't know if that's crazy or not.
So somebody asked, Don Miller wants to know, and I keep changing subject, sorry, but there's a lot of questions. Dead Sea Scrolls?
Yeah, Dead Sea Scrolls totally vindicated that the old writings, the Torah and a lot of the other prophets were dead on balls accurate the whole time. Never got changed.
Any love for the pagan friends?
Of course, man. Dude, I'm like,
Love for everybody.
Right?
check this out. You
Love
want to?
thy neighbor.
I'm gonna offend everybody. You ready for this?
Man. Ready.
Pretty much every Christian in the United States or in the Western world is 90% paganism, guys. Sorry. A lot of it. Like all the holiest days of the year, all
Our
this stuff
pagan.
comes from Rome, bro. So of course, like I grew up in the United States. Everyone, it's baptized paganism. They just changed the names of the gods. And now, where you're going to find the truth is in what that guy actually said. That's where you're going to find the truth. But everything that's been passed on traditionally from the Roman system is, I mean, it was a very good political move by Constantine. I mean, a really smart move to do it that way because you get a lot more converts, right? Because you send a letter to the priest of Mithra, right? Send a little letter like, hey, guess what, priest of Mithra? You're now a priest of Jesus. Oh, okay. Whatever you say, sir. You know, they work for the government anyways. You bet. So that they have the same exact religion. They just changed the names of all the gods. They literally took the statue of Jupiter out of the pantheon and then said that that was now Peter. Literally.
Serious?
No, that's literally like if you take a tour and read like the little notes and stuff in the pamphlet, you're like, weird. Yeah, no, I mean, that's a historical reality. And so, of course, I have love for the pagans, man, because 90% of Christian habits are pagan. it's reality, man. It's okay. I mean, we're trying to come out of Babylon. We're on our way out, right? And so that's like the parable or the type is like, so like think about Israel in Egypt, right? Israel had to leave their homeland because multiple reasons they screwed up. And so then their deal that they had to deal with was being subjugated by the Egyptians. They got invited in as foreigners and they took them in. The Egyptians did. The Egyptians took them in. But after a few hundred years, after about 400 some years, they kind of became the slaves and they kind of got used a bit, right? And so they had enough and they took on a lot of idolatry, a lot of pagan practices. They basically became crazy heathens like the Egyptians were back in them days, right? Like worshiping cats in the backyard and whatever the hell them guys did on top of pyramids or whatever. I don't know what they were doing back then. But Ra and all that, all that fun stuff. The falcon guy with that falcon head or whatever, like on the movie, right?
Osiris?
Yeah, I know. I'm just being silly. I don't like to mention the actual names because they're a bunch of goofballs. But so they were in Egypt, and when they came out of Egypt, they had to first have a Passover situation. Okay? Think about that. Think about that. And then they had to go through the Red Sea. They had to go into the water, right? Does this sound familiar kind of to anybody?
A little bit.
Like you have to pass through the water and be cleansed,
Oh, yeah.
right? You know what I'm talking about? And then what do? You're arrived at the Holy Land, right? Nope. You're
Oh,
wandering.
you wait, right?
You're wandering around in the frickin' wilderness for 40 years trying to figure out how stuff works. God had to march them around for 40 years before they got to the Holy Land so that they would get all the paganism off of them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They had to like let that generation basically kind of pass away. And then they're past the renewed explanation of things like through the law, right? Because, I mean, I think that Moses was the guy that edited Genesis and put it in there. And there's a lot of people who wonder exactly who wrote it for all the different books. And then they come up with the law, right? Well, they didn't come up with the law. They were given the law from the flaming giant thing that landed on Jabal al-Lawz, Mount Sinai. Like a big thing came down that was on fire and was making sounds. And if you read Exodus, it's like an awesome movie, bro. You ever hear that one? Yeah. Anyways, so they were given the law. First step number one, you have to decide you're going to leave Egypt, which is representative of all the bad stuff. Step number two, you need to have a Passover situation happen in your life. Okay. Step number three, you need to run away from Pharaoh because he's going to be pissed that you leave in Egypt. He's going to try to kill you. And so you got to run, and then you get cornered by him, but then miraculously, he saves you, and you get through the Red Sea, and he gets drowned. All those guys that are chasing you drowned miraculously in the Red Sea. And so you pass down through the water. Step number 4 is you go, and then after all that stuff happens, then you get introduced to the full law. God comes down on Mount Sinai and gives you the full, the spiel. Because why? Why did they have to have the whole law passed down onto Moses? It was simple, I think, in the days preceding that. It was like, love your Father in heaven. Everyone kind of got that deal, right? and there was books that were passed down the wisdom and stuff. But like after being in Egypt for so long, they had to have it like spelled out for them, because everyone's like, "All right, let's worship the cow god today," or whatever. Like, wait a minute, no, we're serving which god are we serving today? I forgot. There's like 9,000 of them, so they had to go for 40 years studying the law and get the paganism off of them before they could enter into the land. And so after that, then they went into the land and crossed over the River Jordan. And went in there. So that's kind of the process.
It's a journey.
It's a big journey. So I forget what the point of the whole story was, but it's normal to like not be there yet. So, the love for the pagan friends. Hey man, Israel had problems being pagans. It's written down in the Bible. America has a problem being pagans as Christians. That's written down in reality in front of your face. As approaching even more rapidly as the months ensue. I'm going to shut up.
So what do you want for Christmas this year, Rex?
Shut up, man.
You want a new sniper rifle?
Yeah, that'd be
Easter?
great.
Are you gonna have
Uzi.
Easter eggs or?
Stop it. What's the next question?
How about?
We're trying to get the paganism off of us.
So somebody asked about the giants.
Oh, the Nephilim.
Yeah, they wanted to hear more about that, and
I have heard that copper bullets actually kill them the best, is what I was informed on.
that's why we keep a few copper.
Yeah, I got them actually right in front of me here. Do you want to know about this? This is where they get really concerned.
Right? Do you
There's
want
like
me
a
to show
sec-
you a?
No. Well, I have to explain this first.
Okay.
There's like a secret base under a mountain someplace. Or, by the way, hey, it was Veterans Day, right?
Yeah, happy Veterans Day.
Hey, all the veterans, good job. There's like millions of them. Good job, whatever. That's awesome. We appreciate it, right?
Thank you, guys.
You betcha. What were we just talking about now?
A
something
secret
about-
base under a mountain.
There's a
somewhere.
secret base under a mountain someplace. I'm being a real goofball. I'm
That's how
sorry.
you started off.
This is what happens when I drink caffeine instead of beer. Yeah, it's not going to be very good. It's going to be bad. But there's a base under a mountain where they are watching the Rex Reviews videos trying to figure out what the hell's going on. Like, we don't know what to do. They're acting eccentric. We probably better make a law called HR 5717 for people that are crazy because we don't know what to do with them. Nah. We're being funny. Look under my description. I am a comedy guy too, okay? Most of these videos are comedy deals. Oh man, we're going to have to shut her down. We're low on batteries soon.
My God.
Believe it or not, we're on batteries. Yeah.
Should I show them the table?
No, don't show them the table. It's too scary. But I do have anti-Nephilim bullets loaded, ready to go for when they start popping out of the ground. That's a joke for all the goofballs writing down actual notes someplace like, I think Rex thinks there's a Nephilim. We better... No. We're being silly, okay? But no, Nephilim is simply a word. Nephil means giant, like a big guy. There's big guys back in the day. Never hear legends about giants from any culture? Like all the cultures talked about that? Yeah. There's apparently different kinds of folks that was really big back in the day. How big? I don't know.
We weren't there.
Andre the Giant was pretty big. We'll take one more question, then we'll shut her down. Because of the battery, I'm sorry.
I'll let you guys kind of filter your questions in. It usually takes a couple seconds.
I do like this form of the Rock and Roll Bible Church, though, man.
I do too.
This is how it was in the first century, by the way. Did you know that?
On YouTube?
No, around the supper table.
I got you.
Yeah. They sat around the supper table, and they broke bread and wine, and they hung out together, and they explained how all the stuff was going down. That was church back in the day. Mm-hmm. For if the actual guys, and by the way, yeah, they had a little bit different perspective of things than we do, because we come from different cultures, man.
Okay. So the only question I got in was this one, so I'm gonna ask it.
They're conversing, aren't they?
Christians and abortions from Seagull Light Dark.
From a seagull?
No.
What the hell are you talking about? Seagulls having abortions? What?
That's his name. Seagull Light Dark is asking about Christians and abortion.
Christians and abortions. Well, The law was to be fruitful and multiply. Right? There you go. Pretty easy answer.
All right. Is that it then?
Pretty easy answer, man.
I think that's
We might have time for another question.
Right? Okay. Come on, guys.
And also, there's other commandments too, but we already went over those. Go ahead.
I'm waiting.
A lot of people hang with us through this tonight, guys.
Yeah.
I'm impressed.
110?
You guys are awesome. These are the true cats right here. You guys rock and roll. We used to do this back in the old days. I used to have videos about this stuff, and I had so much fun doing it. So I just felt like we need to start doing it. We do it on the podcast too. So
The thing about doing it live is you don't have to go back and
I don't edit it out all the crazy stuff you accidentally said. Okay, real quick. Yep.
They want a what if section.
Oh man, dude, the battery's on 10%. We
Oh,
ain't gonna
hang
get
on.
it.
I had a really.
You got a quick one, like a
Go.
2-minute kind of deal?
I read a question earlier today.
All right, let's do it.
Here we go.
Just kill 5 seconds here, guys. 5 seconds. Okay, you ready?
Yep.
This is a good one.
What is it?
Elon Musk has announced he is opening a human zoo. You would be paid $2 million per year to live in a clear exhibit on display. Would you sign up? Why or why not?
Can I answer?
Yeah.
Yep. I'm signed up. I don't mind. You
What's
can
in
watch
this
me.
box?
You're in a zoo, Rex.
I mean,
With plants and stuff?
Well, it's your natural habitat.
If it's a Garden of Eden type deal, it wouldn't be the most beautiful display until after they got my diet straightened out. I'm all in. If it's if there's grapes and stuff and fruit to eat from, I'm all in for that kind of exhibit. But if it's like a glass cubicle with white walls, no, I'm good. I choose life.
Well, definitely,
not healthy.
Like, do you get to leave the zoo, or do you have like a contract? Because if it's like for a year, I'm signed up. Put me in a box. You can watch what I do. I don't care. I'm not that interesting. You're gonna see a lot of like drinking lattes and, watching videos. I don't know.
Is that a real thing?
Well, that's the other thing too, though, is if we're in a real zoo here, a human zoo, if humans are supposed to be in their natural environments, would we have any of this technology? Would we have lattes?
We are in a freaking zoo right now, aren't we?
Yeah, the circus.
We are currently in the glass box, and I still don't care. You can watch me all you want. I'm just
We're,
drinking
dude, did
lattes.
you... Dude, the zoo I wanted to be in, it had plants in it. That's our natural habitat.
Mm-hmm.
We need to return back to nature, dude. I'm about to become a naturalist. I'll wear clothes and loincloths and stuff. You guys in for that?
Zoo it is?
I need to go someplace warmer though, man. Like if I go outside right now and just like not have a furnace, I'd die. Because I live in the great white scary north up here. But that's interesting. We do live in the zoo right now.
But not a natural one.
Not a natural
this
one
is
at
an
all.
artificial plastic zoo that we bought at Walmart.
Gosh darn it. Just blew my mind.
Lou, what
It's a
would
good place to leave her.
Huh?
Would you be in the zoo?
We're already in a zoo.
We're already
Oh, you're
in the
already
zoo.
good with it?
Yeah.
Good. That's where I was at.
We were raised in the zoo. We don't even. We're like in that movie Madagascar, where the animals are like in the New York Zoo their whole life, and they don't understand that they get out into the wild. They think there's some kind of weird other zoo, and they have to figure out nature. That's basically the situation we're in. And on that note, guys, it was awesome. We'll catch you on the next rock and roll, real dudes Bible study questions visit session.
That's going to be a long acronym, man.
Woo!
All right, love you guys.
Thanks for hanging
Thanks,
out,
guys.
folks.
You betcha.
Take
Catch you
care.
later.